So my interest in the burning of Cork began many years ago when I discovered a series of old postcards relating to that tumultuous event in Cork City itself. These were initially published by the Manchester Guardian newspaper, and they were later republished by the Cork printers Guy and Company. The interesting thing about the burning of Cork is that the only contemporary account that exists are either eyewitness reports that were in the press, or else we have the seminal Irish Labour Party report of January 1921, and they recorded a 70 eyewitness account at the time. It appears that history kind of waned as regards the subject and in the burning of the city, and no books were actually published at the time. And it's only in later years that interest kind of came back again as regards what actually happened. We had the successful rebuilding of the city with its new modern architecture, and the tragic events then of the Civil War, and that nearly bankrupted Ireland both morally and financially, and this all led to a kind of a collective amnesia about what happened at the time. I suppose people were kind of embarrassed, they were ashamed to say that their city had actually been burned by the British forces. We're looking at a map here. It's a map of Cork City, and it's prior to 1920. And it just gives a slight overview of how the city looked at the time. We're looking, for instance, there in the centre of the map there, Great George's Street. In 1918, Great George's Street became Washington Street because we had a nationalist corporation in place who were busy at the time renaming some of the streets. Just look at the city itself and see what was actually happening in the city. Why were people unhappy with British rule? So in the period 1859 to 1919, only 700 houses, or 12 houses per year, had been built by the local authority. This resulted in the growth of tenements, where the poor rented rooms in large old houses which had been vacated by Cork's elite classes. 719 tenements were the homes of 2,928 families, which consisted of 3,772 males and 4,903 females, totaling 8,673 persons, or 1/9 of the entire population of the city. It's very hard to actually fathom that. Society at the time was marked by a huge degree of inequality between the richest and the poorest. The opulent 1% owned 70% of the total wealth of the country. We'll just have a look here at this particular image, and it's a view of one of the lanes in Cork in the north side, and you can literally see the poverty. It screams out at you. You see how the houses are so near each other. You can see the children in their bare feet, and you can see kind of an emaciated dog there in the background. So this is what we were looking at in the likes of tenements, what was actually happening in the city at the time. Looking at Patrick Street, we're looking at motor cars, which were becoming a very familiar sight on Patrick Street. And the reason I'm looking at Patrick Street now is you can see the buildings here to the immediate right, and these are the ones that were destroyed during the burning of the city itself. So it's just to look at this and get an idea of the architecture. And we just look at some more views now. Again, we see Henry Ford had built his first factory in Cork in 1917, setting, I suppose, Ireland and Cork on the road to industry, which he claimed at the time. I look at some of the actual businesses that existed, and here we have James Mangan, and fortunately the pillar clock still exists in Patrick Street. December the 2nd, shops and rooms at Marble Street were on fire at 1 a.m. December the 10th, North Main Street, a timber yard was set on fire at 4:10 a.m. And we're just looking here at one of the images of Ryan's, and why was Ryan's set on fire? The reason was that Ryan's were Republican, and they had Irish-made umbrellas, costumes, brooches, and they wanted people to buy the products basically of Ireland at the time and to keep the workers working. Here we have an image of the burned out premises of Forrest and Sons in November. This is at the corner of Cork Street. This is the premises of the Irish Transport and General Workers Hall and Camden Quay, which were destroyed. And as you can see, either side, both houses were destroyed as well.